So we're super excited today because we have a special guest, on a red light this evening. Yes,
We're always excited about our Red Champions.
we are excited about our
Yes.
red champions.
Yep. They're helping us pave the way.
They are.
Thomas,
And this one is no different. So, welcome to Red Light, hosted by Red Development Group. I am Colette Portis, and the other beautiful lady is my business partner,
Reggie Kemp.
Yes, and this is the space where we highlight our amazing red champions.
Yeah.
Oh my God. If only you all could have been a fly on the wall during our champions meeting, you would know how great they are. So if any of you are listening, thank you. We love you. We're excited that you are a red champion. And so our champion tonight is just as phenomenal as the rest. And our champions are the companies and organizations and individuals who help us help you, the business community. So here's our promise. We promise that you will have a good time. We promise that you will learn something and you're going to walk away with something that you didn't have before you got here. How about that?
Right.
All right. So today our guest is Mr. Thomas Brown Jr. It's important to say the junior. So Thomas Brown is an entrepreneur. Thomas Brown is a Northwestern law student. Thomas Brown is a lifelong learner, and he's a millennial.
Oh,
I know, right?
That's a combination, right?
He's a combination of all of those things, but most importantly, he's my baby. Yeah.
How exciting!
Maybe
is
not
that?
so much baby anymore because he's, 22. So
Right.
But anyway, so listen, this is going to be a great conversation. This is a conversation that does not happen. So, are you ready? I hope you're ready.
I'm ready.
I hope
Yes,
you're tuned in.
let's do it.
I hope you're doing a watch party. If you're not, you should be. You should be tagging other entrepreneurs because I promise you they need to hear this conversation, because hearing this conversation is going to make them go have another conversation. Ooh. But you got to be present to win, right? So here we go. Reggie, it's going to get us
Thomas, tell us, what is entrepreneurship to you? Excuse me. And then I want you to share from the perspective of how you felt about it going from high school to college, and then college to preparing for your career beyond that, because you've had a different outlook on what entrepreneurship is to you.
So first of all, thank you for having me on today. Really excited to have this conversation. But entrepreneurship to me, I don't think I can define it within, the normal scope of words. It's not necessarily, a textbook definition. I think it's a series of actions. When I think of entrepreneurs, I think of problem solvers or people who are, filling the gap in some industry. There are no characteristics that can define what it means to be an entrepreneur because all of us are so different.
Right.
But when I think of entrepreneurship and what it means to be an entrepreneur, I definitely think you're there filling some gap, you're filling some hole. You're giving someone or some group of people a service or a product that they did not necessarily know that they needed, because if they knew that they needed it, then they would have just done it themselves.
Right. Right.
So if I could describe it in one word, I would say, innovative. That would definitely be it. And then my perspective has definitely changed from going high school to college and then, college into law school. In high school and moving into college, I feel like I was in a very sheltered world. So my mother would always tell me about how we come from a family of entrepreneurs, and in that time, my perception of an entrepreneur was someone who, owns a small business and, works really hard and always puts their time into that. And it might be something that they're doing in their community. It might get to the state or regional level, but I didn't really think of people like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk as entrepreneurs. And then when I moved from college into law school, that definitely got so much more broad. And just seeing that it kind of changed my definition of entrepreneurship as a whole. And seeing that there isn't one definition of entrepreneurship, there isn't one lane, there isn't a certain checklist that you need to follow to become an entrepreneur. It's really just being able to see a whole and think your way through it and really come up with a process or a product that fills a need.
Right. I like the fact that you mentioned that your mother always told you about entrepreneurship growing up, because that's what creates the legacy. That's what continues the legacy. And that's what helps you as a person understand who you are and what you can be. So thanks for sharing that.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that you said that was very interesting was the idea of what an entrepreneur is, because I think a lot of times that we don't think of Jeff Bezos as an entrepreneur. We don't think of Warren Buffett as an entrepreneur. We don't, and they absolutely are. They absolutely are entrepreneurs. And the other thing you said was that entrepreneurs are innovative and problem solvers. And I think I think that was the golden nugget so far, because right now where we are, there's so many entrepreneurs who, because their doors are closed, have closed their business, as opposed to functioning in that lane as an entrepreneur and becoming innovative and creative and solving their own issue. Because we're really great at solving other people's issues. But how do you solve your own issue in allowing your business to still thrive and grow, even though you can't get in the building right now?
Right.
So that was good stuff. So Thomas, I want to talk about, because your focus in college is entrepreneurial law and venture capitalism, which I think is awesome. We didn't have that option when I was in college. Venture capitalism, I don't even know if it was a thing back then. But what would you say the relationship between those two is? What's the relationship between entrepreneurship and venture capitalism? Because I think Jeff Bezos probably has a really good idea of it, but I think, Joe's Burger Shack doesn't really get it. They don't really get it.
Yeah.
When I think about the relationship between venture capitalism and entrepreneurship, it's hand in hand. It's like peanut butter and jelly. And there are some cases where entrepreneurs don't necessarily need venture capital. That's not what they're looking for, but that is the responsibility of the entrepreneur to really understand where they want their business to go and, what the actual purpose of their business is. So when, from a VC standpoint, when I think of an up and coming business, it's not necessarily, do I invest or do I not invest? It's, where do I think this business could go? And, is that something that the entrepreneurs or the founders also agree on? So the relationship between entrepreneurship and venture capital, like I said, is peanut butter and jelly, but it's also, it's also all just peanut butter. The fact that a person in a venture capital firm has to think like an entrepreneur, because at the end of the day, a lot of the times that's what they are. They're started by, a small group of people who want to go out, raise capital and help other entrepreneurs. So, looking at the relationship between the two, it's kind of just, where do you want your business to go? And is this the right direction it should be going in? Because there's a bunch of different ways to get funding for a business. There's grants, there's, VC, of course, there's crowdfunding. But when you consider venture capital, a lot of the times you're giving up equity in your business. And you have to consider if that's something that's appropriate, Because if you own a nonprofit and, you know, you go to a VC firm that might not have, or that might have a company within its profile that doesn't necessarily align with your values, is it the smart decision to, you know, work with them, or should you go look somewhere else? So I feel like entrepreneurship is really, you know, the pillar for venture capitalism. And then they both work in this nice, they both have a nice horizontal relationship, where one feeds into the other. So yeah, those are my takes.
And I think one of the things well, let me ask this question before I say that. So you've worked at the VC firm at Northwestern. And so you've had some experience, you know, actually working in the field, not just studying, but working in the field and learning from some of the top people in the field of venture capitalism. So if you had to tell our audience what the top 3 questions are they should be able to answer, or they should ask themselves if they were wanting to or were thinking about approaching a venture capitalist firm or someone who's going to invest in their business, what would you say those top 3 questions are?
First, I feel the most important question is, what is the purpose of your business? Especially now with a lot of millennials moving into venture capitalism. We always want to know what is the purpose. And I'm currently in a financial markets class now that teaches that, you know, money is not, or finance is not what it used to be. It's not looked at in the same lens as it used to be. In a sense that in the past, finance was a lot of how do we make money? And now it's looked at from the perspective of how do we change the world? So that is, you know, even if your mission is not to change the world, which it doesn't need to be, but how do you impact your community? How do you have a long lasting impact on whoever your target market is? Because at the end of the day, that's where you're going to reach, you know, that's where you're going to gain the most money, the most capital. If you're moving within your purpose and if you're doing exactly what you should be doing. Which is a really, really hard question to ask and to answer, you know, because at the end of the day, your business can completely change, as we've seen now, you know, with COVID-19, a lot of businesses have to shift and they're not necessarily doing what they were doing, you know, even 2 months ago. So that's a really important question. The next question is, how can you change? How have you changed the industry that you're in? And how can you continue to change? I was listening to this podcast and they were talking about one corporation that used to make light bulbs for train conductors. And how, you know, once that industry went out of business, they were able to shift and pivot and do something else. And they've been around for almost 150 years. And every few years, they shift and they pivot and they bring something new out. You know, they were Amazon before Amazon was Amazon, you know, in the sense that as an entrepreneur and as a business, you always need to be innovative. And that's one thing that we're starting to see now with a lot of companies, you know, hiring chief innovation officers and things like that, which is really behind the curve because this company's been doing it since I think like 1906 or something.
Yeah.
But your question should be, you know, you should be able to answer, if your industry went completely under today, how would you be able to shift and pivot and stay afloat? Because I mean, the last thing someone wants to do is, you know, get a bailout or something like that. And we see even now with the aviation industry, you know, they have huge swaths of money. But at the end of the day, if you look at their profit margins, they're super low. And then now no one's traveling. So it's like, what are we going to do? And at the end of the day, we can't afford to lose the entire aviation industry. So they should be answering, you know, they should be asking themselves, how can we pivot to still make money in a time where there are not butts in seats? And then the last question, which is probably is equally as important as the first question. It's who is on your team and how does your team function together? One thing I've heard time and time again is we will take from VC firms and, you know, managing directors, it's we will take a, you know, B+ idea with an A+ team over, you know, an A+ idea and a B- team, you know, because at the end of the day, those are the people that you're relying on, and that chemistry is the most important aspect of a business, especially in its early stages. This is a clear example from, you know, Facebook. I mean, although now Facebook has become what it is, but in the beginning, Facebook was, you know, had a lot of problems, and it's because the team didn't work well together. And then at the end of the day, they had to do some maneuvering, and you know, some of the things weren't as ethical back then. But at the end of the day, now we look at Facebook. I mean, we're even streaming this on Facebook now. So if you can't answer, you know, how well does your team work together? And it's not even an answer that you put into words. It's when you go and present and when you're in meetings, what does that chemistry look like? You know, what does your body language look like? How are you guys communicating with each other? That shows investors and that shows your, you know, your audience that we've got this, you should believe in us, you should support us. And at the end of the day, you should give us your money.
Right, that's the important question. Listen, that is amazing, because I can tell you there are some things that you've mentioned that I hadn't thought about, which is one of the things I love about the fact that you go to Northwestern, because every time we have a conversation, you bring up something that I hadn't thought about. And I've been in the game for 20 something years, and, you know, long as you've been born, right? It's just not possible to know everything, but it is possible to learn something from everybody. Everybody has something to add. And I saw Reggie's ears peak up when you start talking about profit margins.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Just because they have money does not mean they have profits.
Right. Does not mean that at all.
Yeah.
And,
I mean,
you know,
a clear example.
No, go ahead, Thomas.
A clear example is, you know, is Delta Airlines. No matter how much I love them, you know, they just laid off a bunch of people, or furloughed a bunch of people. And a few months ago, they were all in the news because they had given people, I think 2 or 3 months worth of salary as a bonus, instead of doing like a stock buyback or giving more dividends and bonuses to their shareholders. They gave it to their employees. You know, and looking at what we as society consider to be ethical or something that we want to see in companies. And now at the end of the day, those people don't really have a job now just because something switched. You know, airlines already know that their profit margins are super low. And one thing that also sucks is the gas price is super low now, but no one's flying, you know?
Right.
And at the end of the day, airlines need to keep planes in the air because it's just cheaper. But they're also losing profit every time they do it. So I definitely think looking at the aviation industry now, even within the United States with the whole Boeing thing that's been going on in the FAA, there's going to be a lot of changes, not only from the regulatory perspective, but also from, you know, the internal business perspective on how they actually structure their business and how they make their money. You know, to try to increase those profit margins, because as you've seen, one virus can go around and completely shut down an entire industry.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Several industries. Yeah. So, you know, he mentioned a couple of things when he talked about entrepreneurship and venture capitalism. You know, one thing about his generation is that they will have our generation and before us, when they went in business, they wanted to stay in business for their entire lives. Mm-hmm. Now, when his generation and venture capitalists, they build it for the purpose of selling it. Such a difference between then and now. And not everybody, but, you know, a lot of times that's just not something that happens. So Thomas, tell me, how has it been growing up with entrepreneurs as parents?
Honestly, I'd say it was one of the most beneficial things. I didn't really start realizing that until I graduated undergrad. Because I mean, as a kid, your parents are always busy and they're always trying to teach you things, and that's the last thing you want to hear.
And that's annoying.
Yeah. But now, you know, being in law school and learning business so much and in so many different capacities, you know, one of my professors will say something and I'm like, whoa, I think my mom or dad mentioned that when I was in like 6th grade.
Yeah.
Right.
You know? So, you know, even backtracking, it's really nice to have parents who are able to teach you so business, to the fact that I was able to go to college and, you know, learn something that I was actually interested in. You know,
Right.
I majored in a hard science, and then I was able to come out already having so much business knowledge. And now I have this science knowledge, and now I'm tagging on, you know, the legal knowledge and seeing how they all connect here at Northwestern together. So it really just allowed me to not have to sit in a classroom and learn things, because the classroom was, you know, our dinner table, or the classroom was a drive home, you know, or even just a simple phone call. And that's still what's going on now.
Yeah.
So having parents as entrepreneurs, I mean, it teaches you so much, not only about business, but also about, you know, life and being independent and really, I hate to use the term, but, you know, picking yourself up from your bootstraps, you know, and grinding and putting in the work to actually see something, you know, happen, you know, in 1 or 2 months, or actually building something with your bare hands, and not necessarily your bare hands, because I'm not like building a cabin or something, but, you know, actually going out, building something, and reaping the benefits of those, and being able to say, man, this is something that I actually did, and what did I learn from that? You know, and another thing you learn is how to deal with failure very early on, because it's something that you're surrounded by literally every day. You know, there hasn't been a day where my parents haven't told me about a time that they failed. But with that comes, I might have failed at this, but I learned X. You know, the sentence never just ends at, oh, I failed, period. That's not it. It's, I failed and I learned whatever, you know? So that's given me just like a really good basis in life whenever I do anything, you know, if it's from playing sports or if it's from starting a business. It's been able to give me a really nice perspective on life, and just a perspective on how life works, which has really been able to, I'd say, put me a few steps ahead of my peers.
Yeah. So Thomas, one of the things I'll say as a parent, as an entrepreneur and a parent, but as a child of an entrepreneur, I was on purpose about making sure that Thomas understood what business was and entrepreneurship was, and having those conversations, like he said, in the car, on the drive home, at the dinner table, because those conversations were never had with me. Although my grandparents, both sets, were entrepreneurs, and my parents were entrepreneurs, and my aunts and uncles were entrepreneurs, nobody ever talked to us about being an entrepreneur. And nobody ever really, as Thomas mentioned, explained to us that failure really isn't a thing. It's a learning lesson. It's an opportunity to learn, as opposed to a point at which you stop, because a period is an indication that this is a point at which you stop. And to not get to the goal that you initially set is not a point at which you stop. It's an opportunity to learn, pivot, as he said before, and then move forward with the hopes of still getting to the initial point that you wanted to get to. So one of the conversations that Thomas and I had recently, because he is a true entrepreneur at heart, and so he called me and he said, Mom, we've got all of this. He's supposed to graduate in what? In literally a month from today.
Like 3 weeks?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, a month from today.
A month from today, he's supposed to graduate, and it's not going to happen. And of course, it's sad. And, you know, And he's saying, you know, I've got friends who aren't taking that well because they've worked really hard. And so what can we do? What can we do to help them? And so what this relationship has been between child and entrepreneur, outside of child and parent, but between child and entrepreneur, has been, if you see the brick wall, then you don't look at the brick wall and go, oh no, it's a brick wall. You look at the brick wall and go say, what options do I have?
That's right.
Yeah. And so one day, this is about a week into undergrad, maybe 2 weeks. One of my favorite stories. I get a call from Thomas, who had been so used to being connected to his community. He was doing all kinds of stuff in our hometown when he was in high school, and everybody knew him. And when I say everybody, I mean CEOs of companies and people at Kellogg Corporation and all that. He was so used to that. Then he gets to college, right? And he turns off the entrepreneur and turns on the crybaby. Well,
Thomas.
I wanted to be normal. I just wanted to be normal for a little bit.
You were normal for just a second until you got on the phone with me. So he calls me and he goes, well, Mom, I've tried to do this. And so I love E.T., the hip hop preacher. And so he graduated from Michigan State University, was teaching every Tuesday on campus for free at Michigan State. So I had been saying to him, you need to go see E.T. I'm going to fly there and we can go see E.T. You need to go see E.T. So he calls me one day and he goes, Mom, he sends me a text that says, what did it say? I think I made a big mistake. And I'm thinking, oh my God, today is the day. Today's the day. So I called him and I'm like, what do you mean you made, he said, I think I made a bad decision. I said, what do you mean you think you made a bad decision? So he goes on and on and on about how he's not connecting and he's tried. And so I listen to all of this stuff and I say, so how did you try? This was the turning point. And he says, well, I sent an email. Well, you listen, if there were a button, it was pushed at that moment. So we had a good come to Jesus meeting. But Thomas, I want you to tell them what came as a result of that good come to Jesus meeting.
So from then, and it's also one of my favorite stories to tell, just because it was such like it was like once you like reach rock bottom, and that was my rock bottom at that time. And, you know, now you only climb up the mountain. But as a result, I reflected on my life and, you know, my educational background and, you know, coming from where I come from and seeing how many people followed similar paths to me and going to college from my high school. And there weren't many, but I was sitting there and I was thinking, what made me so different? What happened in my life that made me different than those people, and why I didn't follow, you know, their path. And then from there, after reflecting, I was like, I want to give the opportunities that I had, or similar opportunities that I had, to other people in my community, and just see if, you know, if that helps them, if that gives them, you know, a different outlook on life. Because like I said, I grew up with parents who are entrepreneurs, and we were always doing something. We were always traveling somewhere, moving somewhere. So as a kid, I saw a lot of the world, you know, and even if that was, you know, eating different foods from different places or completely packing up and moving to a different state. Yeah. I saw a lot of the world, and that's something that a lot of people in my community don't necessarily get the opportunity to experience. So I was like, I was thinking, and I was like, how can I give them that experience without having to, you know, move them across the country? And then from there, I created a nonprofit that really reshaped the way that we looked at education and at teaching students, and just giving them the opportunity to learn in a way that was comfortable for them, but also learn in a way that was outside of the traditional classroom. So I wanted nothing to do with, you know, a worksheet, sitting at their desk doing any of that. I was like, you know, this second grader is going to learn calculus and they're going to do it, you know, because a lot of the things that I experienced were, you're in this grade, you learn these things, and that's, you know, that's the benchmark that you should meet. And for me, I was like, why do we need this benchmark? Why can't I just learn, you know, whatever I want to learn? And I understand the importance of having benchmarks to prove certain things. But you very rarely see people exceed those benchmarks. It's kind of like doing the bare minimum, and that's good. And within the U.S. education, you know, system, that is, we do the bare minimum. This is what you need to get to 7th grade. You meet that, you're going to 7th grade. You know, but why can't we teach 7th graders things that they learn in 9th grade? Was really the question that I was pushing. And then from there, I ended up starting a nonprofit organization that really pushed that envelope and was like, second graders can learn, you know, calculus, but they can also learn, you know, science, math, reading, and business skills, entrepreneurial skills from having a popcorn store in their classroom. You know, it's something that a lot of people may think is childlike, but at the end of the day, if you're asking a second grader what reactions are going on to make that popcorn kernel turn from, you know, what we see, you know, in a picture on, you know, a corn stalk to the popcorn that you're able to eat. How much oil, how much salt, how much time, how much heat, you know, breaking it down, asking them those questions and doing mathematical formulas and doing stoichiometry. You know, they're going to end up learning so much, and being able to take that way of thinking or that way of processing information on to the next level, which was really the goal. I want to change the way that you think about problems within the world, because at the end of the day, whenever you approach something, there's not going to be a worksheet that says 2 + 2 = 4 and that's it. You know, the important part is, what equation did you use, or what process did you use to get to that answer? And it baffles me, because even in high school, if you just wrote down the answer, you wouldn't get full credit. You had to show how you got to the answer.
Right.
And it's like, why don't we just teach that from the beginning? So I ended up, you know, going on and doing that business for about 3 years. Really enjoyed it, really expanded it. Ended up reaching approximately 100,000 students worldwide. And then, you know, ended up giving it away to someone, you know, one of our competitors who actually thought it was useless in the beginning. And now they enjoy it. So yeah, that was the outcome of it. But my experience from, you know, living with entrepreneurs really put me back in the place, and I had to answer those questions that you know, that I mentioned in the first question. You know, how do I make an impact? You know, what does my team look like? And how do I change the world? You know, it's not, you know, I'm not thinking about how much money can I make off of a nonprofit organization. That's never the goal. But how do I really change the world from this idea?
Colette?
Yeah.
I actually have a question from the Facebook audience.
Go right ahead.
So she says, do you feel a lot of young adults are hard to motivate once there is a failure with employment? If so, what are some suggestions in encouraging individuals to get back up?
Thomas, I'll let you answer first.
So that's actually something that I'm experiencing right now. But what keeps me motivated every day is, you know, I'm never looking for, you know, I had this conversation with my mom. I'm not looking for, you know, a job or a position. I'm looking for something that I'm interested in, something that's going to feed me and fulfill my purpose, and somewhere where I can be of service. So I feel, one thing that keeps me going is being, really solid in my core values and what's important to me. And then at the end of the day, trying to make myself better. When you're applying to different positions, the question always is, how does this one, pillar get me to the next pillar? How do I get to the next step? And how do I continuously grow from there? So, I mean, now at a time where the world may feel stagnant, I'm still finishing my coursework. I just started an initiative to, help people within the class of 2020 or people in college, find internships, find opportunities, even though I may not have one. I'm always thinking, how can I help? And I have a huge network, which is great. So I'm able to send resumes to people. And also I'm in a position now where I'm able to, if I see one of my friends who has talent, I'm able to look at the business that I work in and see, hey, where can you fit in? Where can you be of service? And where can you gain that experience and that knowledge? And another thing I do is I enroll in, a lot of free courses online, just to keep learning. That's what motivates me. That's what makes me better. That's what, keeps me up at night, is just this sense that, one, what do you want to do? Does this company align with your core values? And, if you got denied, reevaluate it. Why? It's never something that's personal. If you submit an application and all they have is your resume and they say no, it's not personal. It didn't match up, and there's a greater reason why. But also, how can you be better? How can you continuously learn? And how can you help someone else? Because at the end of the day, if you show that at a time where you were down or at a time where the world felt stagnant and everyone else, even those hiring managers who are looking at your application, felt like the world had stopped, and you pushed the envelope and you kept going, and you're able to put that on a resume, they're going to look at that and they're either going to be really intimidated by it and you shouldn't work for them at all, or two, they're going to look at that and be like, this person is a real leader. And, even at the toughest times where where literally the world has no idea what's going on, and this person was able to sit back, reflect, and make themselves better and improve their life. I mean, at the end of the day, you're unmatched, because there are very few people who have that perspective on not only themselves, but also their life and current events. So
I agree with that. I'm going to read a comment from Siobhan Patterson on our Facebook stream. She said, building a brand is important, and being always able to adapt to change is beneficial for any company. You need to learn how to change with the times. Being stagnant will harm a business. And then Alex Andrews says, sometimes just listening can answer all the questions you have. I am truly learning from this discussion. So going back to the question that was asked, my answer is similar to what Thomas said. You have to pivot. But what does it mean right now to do that? So Thomas and I had a conversation the other day when he called me and said, how can I help my friends? And I said to him, are they in the race? And I've been saying for the last couple of weeks that my tribe and we're not only in the race, we're on lap number 8. And by the time the world gets back in the race, we will have run 10 laps. We'll take a break while they run 1 lap, and then we'll get back in the game, still 9 laps ahead of them. What are you doing right now to set yourself apart? What problems are you solving right now? One of the things Thomas said is he's not sitting back and sitting on his hands. He's learning. He's figuring out how to help his classmates. He's getting real life experience. One thing that I am absolutely proud of is the fact that when Thomas got ready to go to college, we didn't have to pay for college. We didn't have to pay for college because he had so many things on his resume that he had done, namely, starting a nonprofit, for volunteering for different organizations, sitting on different committees. He knew people. He was building his network. Now is the prime time to, I don't care who you are, adult, child, whoever you are, now is the prime time to build your network. But you have to build that network on your brand. Your brand is what sets you apart. What do you want people to know about you? Does your Facebook feed reflect what you want your employer to understand about you? If the answer is no, you just created a barrier, because I promise you, every good employer is checking your social feeds. They should be. Your social feed is proof of who you are, what your personality is, how you think, how you process thought, who you hang out with. All of that is evident. Don't think for 1 second that fight video you posted doesn't say something about you. It absolutely does. It may not be you fighting in the video, but it absolutely says something about you. And then the question is, if the core values of my company are integrity, love, fun, peace, timeliness, does your Facebook feed say that you match those core values? Who will we say that you are? What have you done to stand out from the rest? When your resume hits the table, what on your resume makes them go, wait, I've got to look at this one? What are you posting on your social feeds that makes us stop and go, oh, wait, let me go back and read what that person said? There's greatness in there's not one of us on this earth that doesn't have greatness in us. But the question is, does your social space reflect the greatness that's in you? Because if the answer is no, then maybe you have to tap into that, bring that forth. So when it comes time for your resume to be sitting on someone's table, they can read that. If you're doing the same thing that everybody else is doing, tell me why I'm hiring you. I've got 35 of you already. I'm looking for the one who's different. And so you've got to do something different to get me to respond to your difference.
So true, so true. So all in preparation to becoming an adult. So Thomas, how can it impact the world, what you're doing, your approach to what you're doing? How can it impact the world?
Ooh, like I said, it's always a hard question to answer, but luckily for me, I think about this often. When I think about my impact, it always goes back to my brand. How do I want people to think about me? And what do I want to leave these people with when I'm gone at the end of the day? How do I want people to remember me? Mm-hmm. And for me personally, it's always very, very hard to make people remember all of the good things about you, because you can do one thing wrong and that's a memory that they'll have in their head. Right. But it's really proving yourself and proving that at no matter the time that you are available and you are reliable. So for me, when I personally think about my brand and my impact on the world, I don't think about it, as trying to do something just so outrageous, so crazy that people have to remember me for that reason, because that's not the kind of person that I am. I am very innovative, yes, but at my core, I'm a person who loves relationships. I really want to nurture that relationship. And if I could have one relationship with every person in the world, I most definitely would. Although that seems impossible, maybe I'll do it one day. But being able to really nurture those relationships and just be authentic in everything that you do has always shown to have the greatest amount of impact. Right. Even when I was at MSU, even when I go back now, so many people I have so many friends and so many acquaintances there. And even when moving to Chicago, I had a whole group of friends already, just because during my time there, I was always so authentic.
Yes.
And I actually let people see the real side of me, the good, the bad, and the ugly, no matter what was going on.
Yeah.
So, and that's really what my brand relies on, being authentic, being there for people, and really nurturing the relationships that I have, because at the end of the day, that is the most important thing that I have. My network, being able to connect with people, having that connection, even in times like this where we can't, connect in person, but we can connect over Zoom.
Right.
Being able to have those relationships and not only have people rely on me, but me rely on them, is the best way to make an impact, or to even begin thinking about making it. So I feel like, whenever I'm asked, how do you make an impact, or how big do you want your impact to be? It's never, a quantifiable number. It's never, I want to impact 1 million people. It's, for me, it's always, I want to be as authentic as possible, because that always yields the best results.
Right.
So I have two questions. This is a two-part question. And I think it's really important, because I started this by saying this is the kind of conversation that never gets had. Entrepreneurs aren't having this conversation with their kids. And I realized today that although we talk a lot about business and entrepreneurship, we hadn't had this conversation. And so this two-part question. First part, what would you tell the parent who's the entrepreneur? What advice would you give them about talking to their kids about entrepreneurship?
The advice I would give is, take it slow. My parents really hit the ground running, and I'm thankful for that. But a lot of people don't really have that same approach. And when I say take it slow, that doesn't mean, cradle them. That just means try to implement it where it is necessary and where it can actually make an impact. If you're just spewing out these words all the time, at the end of the day, you're going to get a child who doesn't really care that much and wants nothing to do with what you have and what you've built. I've really been fortunate to have those little nuggets of information that I can always rely on and always go back to, that I might not even necessarily know that I remembered. I don't remember every conversation we have, but there are some things that, someone else will say, or I'll hear a professor say, and I'll be like, that sounds familiar. But really being able to remember, one, that you're always a parent, and that connection, parent to child is most important. But always being able to give them little nuggets of information and not huge swaths of information at once, because we get enough of that in the classroom. And when I come home or when I have a conversation with my parent, I want it to feel like I'm having a conversation with my parents and not like I'm in another class.
Oh, that's good stuff. So Alex Andrews says, and he's talking about, when I was talking about what's on your social feed and how that reflects and how that becomes a reflection of you, he says, no, that is truly a very important part of what's happening right now. I find myself thinking about the posts that many people post, and I daily try to give a word that can help instead of a temporary entertaining experience. I'm so very proud to have been able to get useful information from my people. So the other part of that question, Thomas, is what would you say to the children? What advice would you have for the children of entrepreneurs?
At the end of the day, your parents are right. And they do truly know what's best for you in your situation in most cases. But it's one thing that I've learned, the hard way in having these conversations. And hearing my parents say something, doing the opposite of it, and learning from that, and then going back and having a conversation like, hey, actually you were right. But
I like those conversations, by the way.
but I would say it's one of the most beneficial parts of those conversations is challenging the ideas that your parents are giving you, because you know, as a child of an entrepreneur, you have such a unique perspective on the world and on daily applications, to the point where I'm always challenging what my parents say. Yes. I'm always like, go look this up. I read something completely different. Let's talk about it. So I think it's really important to, you know, be able to have a relationship where you as a child are able to, you know, tell your parents when they are right, but you're also comfortable enough and confident enough to challenge their ideals. So I say, go forth, challenge them, you know, but if you are wrong, be able to step up, because you're going to eventually learn so much more.
So Brittany McKinney says, but it's really hard to tell them they're right. It's mom or dad. Okay, you were right. That's not hard at all. So one last question. Why did you decide to connect with Red Development Group? And I want you to think about it from the perspective, yes, I'm your mom.
Right.
You know, and you would honor what I ask you. But at the end of the day, you do it because you want to, not because I forced you, because I'm not that kind of parent. I don't force anything. So why are you connected? Because I know that there's a lot of kids whose parents are entrepreneurs, like, as you said, nothing to do with it. But because you've made a decision to connect in all three of my businesses, there's so many things that you're learning. So why is it that you decided to connect?
I decided to connect because my experience in corporate America, you know, interning in corporate America was not what I thought it was, what I thought it was going to be. And, you know, I realized that I have access to so much information for free, you know, and I can pick up the phone or send a text or send an email and get the answer that I need. And I feel like a lot of kids of entrepreneurs don't really understand that their parents are complete banks of knowledge, to the point where, you know, I didn't even get a degree in business, and I understand so much more about business than a lot of my peers who were, you know, those finance or accounting majors. I may not understand, you know, how to, you know, completely do an accounting, you know, assignment or something like that. But at the end of the day, that's something I can learn, you know, and that's something I can go to my parent and ask about. So I think I decided to connect because I realized that there is so much more to be learned here. And there's just unlimited access to it. So why would I not want that information? Like I previously said, I always want to learn and always want to better myself. So, you know, even now, helping out in your businesses, I learned so much. You know, even going through and doing the work that I've been given so far, I've already learned so many more things than you know, I would have if I would have, you know, just stayed doing what I was doing, or if I decided not to help out. But like I said, there's so much information to learn, and it's free. I don't have to, you know, I don't have to bribe anyone. I don't have to pay anyone. There's no certificate. It's there, and you're willing to give it, you know, and not only are you willing to give the information, you're willing to give the experience too, and allow me to learn in a way that's comfortable for me, which is something that I really appreciate. So yeah, I honestly, I feel like I would be dumb not to connect and try to learn as much. And also I realize that, you know, you do what you do for me and for, you know, generations. So it would be selfish of me to not want to learn, although I may not want to, you know, take over at this moment right now, because there are other things that I want to explore and be able to bring back to the business. But I understand at the end of the day, this will be, this is our legacy. And it's something that I need to understand whether I like it or not. Luckily, I do enjoy it. So, I mean, might as well learn now, instead of later when, I'm 45 trying to be the CEO of a business and I don't understand, where it came from.
Right.
Yeah, so that last statement was really huge, saying that it's a part of your legacy and you understand, even though you may not be totally in it right now, you understand, you appreciate it, you respect it, because it is the thing that's providing for you and has provided for you, whether it came from your mom, your dad, them collectively or whatever. And I think so many young adults, they miss it. They want to distance themselves from it. They don't want it. They think it's stupid, but yet it may be the one thing that's keeping them from, Skid Row, living under the whatever. And so for you to recognize that and appreciate that, that's huge coming from you and someone in your age group. So thanks for saying that.
And I think in addition to that, Reggie, one of the points that you made, Thomas, is that I allow you to insert yourself in the business in the way that you want to. I'm not forcing you. And if I'm asking you to do anything as it pertains to the business, I'm coming to you, asking you if this is something you would like to do without, if you, and giving you permission to say, nah, that's not really what I want to do. Because for me as an entrepreneur, I only want to be connected with, and it doesn't matter if it's a family member, a friend, a client, I only want to be connected to the people who see the value in what we have to offer and who want it. They actually want it, because when you connect with people who don't really want what you have, they water down the value of what you bring to the table. And so I think that's important for us as parents, entrepreneurs who are parents, to remember that allow your children to insert themselves where they would like to be inserted. And if they don't know, ask them questions. And if they tell you no, don't be mad. It's okay. They'll figure it out. You just keep doing the work. But it does require that we do the work. Because I think one of the big differences is for, and Thomas, you can say yes or no, for the relationship with Thomas and I, is that he knows I'm always doing the work. He knows that it doesn't matter who helps, I'm getting the work done. And he knows that if he's coming to connect himself to this, it's going to be work, because at the end of the day, the goal is legacy.
And one last statement, even in him coming, we respect him and his perspective, and we needed it.
Oh my God.
We needed that perspective from somebody in your age group with your education, your background. We needed that. And so it is making a difference in the things that we do and how we position some of our programs and workshops. And so it's making a big difference. So we thank you, Thomas.
Thank you, Thomas.
No problem. I'm always
and let me say this. Thomas has actually consulted with the CEO, COO, and the CTO of Red Development Group. He was the consultant sitting at the table, and we were the ones listening, because what he had to say was important, and what he had to say made great changes in our business. So for those of you who are entrepreneurs and parents, don't dismiss that your children have something to add. I'm going to read these two comments, Thomas, and then I'm going to let you have closing remarks. Brittany McKinney says, you always made it easy to come and ask and talk to you about absolutely anything. So she's biased, that's my niece, but I do, because I love them and I genuinely want to hear their heart. And then Alex Andrews says, it's the prodigal son. Mentally, sometimes we go abroad, but we will return because of the teachings. Good stuff, Alex, good stuff. So Thomas, what do you want to close us out with?
What I want to say, and it's one thing that I've really been thinking about for a while now, just considering the times and considering the position that I'm in, is fear is something that can really overtake your life if you allow it to. But as entrepreneurs, we always have to be fearless. We never know what's on the other side of the wall, like you said, but we have to think about how, what our options are and how we're going to get around the wall. And at the end of the day, there is no staying on this one side of the wall. The only answer is getting to the other side of the wall. So what I have to say is be fearless, be courageous, and trust in yourself. Trust that you know what's going on, and be comfortable enough with not only yourself, but the people you surround yourself with, to ask the question if you need help. If you don't know the answer, look it up, ask the question, because I promise you at the end of the day, if you're surrounded by good people, they will be more than willing to help you find out the answer.
This has been so amazing. Oh my goodness. I knew it was going to be good. So listen, that has been Thomas Brown Jr., one of our amazing Red Champions. You can connect with him on LinkedIn. What's your name on LinkedIn?
Thomas Brown Jr.
You can connect with him on LinkedIn, where he's been sharing some really great stuff about his perspective on what's going on today, and encouraging others and encouraging his classmates and things like that. There is a lot more to come as it pertains to him. And so we are super proud of you. We are super excited to have you on our team. He actually sits on our advisory board, and his voice is important to us. And so for those of you who have advisory boards, if you don't have millennials on your board, you have got to make that change and make it now, because their voice has been absolutely vital in our business, especially now. But the other thing is, don't assume that they know everything about technology, because there's some stuff that we have that we can teach them too. And we always say that we grow together. That's the way we do it. And so this has been Red Light, our spotlight on our Red Champions. I am Colette Portis.
And I am Reggie. And I am Reggie Kemp.
Yes. And Thomas Brown has been our guest. Thank you so much for joining us. We see you next week at 6 o'clock right here live on Tuesday.
On Tuesday. So Thomas.